Hi guys, welcome back to All Things Jira, and I'm back with another story. Now, as you can see, the setup is a little different than what I normally do, but this is a different type of story this week. It is a true story, but a different type of story. Now, this story is about the Candyman, also known as the man that ruined Halloween. There are quite a few people that have been called Candyman over the years, but I'm only telling one Candyman story today. Now, before we get into the story, make sure you like, subscribe, and share my channel. Now, this story starts with Ronald O'Brien. Ronald O'Brien was born October 19th, 1944. He lived in Pasadena, Texas with his wife Diane O'Brien, and they had two children, Timothy, who was 8, and Elizabeth, who was 5. Now, Ronald, he worked as an optician and was also a deacon and a choir member at the Second Baptist Church in Pasadena, Texas. On October 31st, 1974, Ronald O'Brien and Jim Bates, who was a friend from his church, they took their 4 children out trick-or-treating. Now, the 4 children included Ronald's 2 children and Jim's 2 children. They went trick-or-treating in Jim's neighborhood in Houston because it was a more upscale neighborhood. It was cold and drizzling that night, so they only went to 2 streets. They went to one home in particular where the lights were off, but they rang the bell anyway. No one answered right away, so the children and Jim went on to the next house, while Ronald stayed there at that house and waited a few more moments. After a while, he eventually caught up with the group and said the owner of the home had opened the door and gave him 5 21-inch pixie sticks. So Ronald said to Jim, "You must have rich neighbors if they're giving out this type of candy." He gave 2 to the 2 of his children, and he gave the other 2 pixie sticks to Jim's children. On the way home, he gave the last pixie stick to a neighborhood child. And when they got home, Timothy asked to eat some of his candy right away. Ronald allowed Timothy to eat the pixie stick. So when Timothy opened the pixie stick and began to eat it, he said that it tasted bitter. So Ronald gave him some juice to wash out his mouth and get rid of the taste. Soon after that, Timothy began to complain of stomach pains. He went to the bathroom and he began vomiting and convulsing. So Ronald goes in the bathroom and tries to comfort Timothy, tries to help him, and eventually Timothy went limp. So Ronald called 911 and an ambulance came and took Timothy to the hospital. Unfortunately, Timothy died on the way to the hospital, and this was only about an hour after he had eaten that pixie stick. An autopsy confirmed that Timothy was poisoned with potassium cyanide. They concluded that it had to have come from the Halloween candy. When this got out in the neighborhood and the area, there was a panic, and all the parents took all of their children's Halloween candy because they weren't sure who had done it and what else was poison. So they gave tons of candy to the police so the police could either get rid of it or, see if it's been tampered with. After receiving all of this candy, the authorities found that only the pixie sticks had been tampered with. Fortunately, the other children that had been given the pixie sticks hadn't eaten them yet, so they were able to get the last 4. So the authorities found that the pixie sticks had been opened on one end, they had been cut open, and the top 2 inches of the sugar inside the pixie sticks had been refilled with potassium cyanide and then stapled shut. They also found that the amount of cyanide in the sticks could kill 2 to 4 adults. Ronald said he couldn't remember exactly which house he got the pixie sticks from because it wasn't his neighborhood. And he also said that he never saw the man's face because the man only opened the door and stuck out his arm to hand him the pixie sticks. The only thing that he could remember was that the man had hairy arms. So Ronald walked the route that they had went with the police 3 times, just trying to go over which houses he went to find out who gave them this poison candy. None of the homeowners gave pixie sticks out that night. Ronald eventually recognized the house that he got the pixie sticks from, and he took the police to that home. Now, the owner of that home was Courtney Melvin. Now, Mr. Melvin was an air traffic controller. So, of course, police investigated Mr. Melvin and found that he had worked until 11 p.m. on Halloween night. And almost 200 people could attest to Melvin being at work that night. Jim had also told police that he never saw Courtney Melvin open his door that night, so Mr. Melvin was ruled out. Now, on November 4th, an insurance agent called the police station to tell investigators that Ronald had taken an insurance policy out on his children for $20,000 each, just a few days before their murder. And this wasn't the only policy. A few months before Timothy died, Ronald took out $10,000 insurance policies on each of the children. And 1 month before he died, he took out another $20,000 on each child. Ronald also requested that his wife not be told about these insurance policies and for the agent to keep the policies in his office. He also told the police that the morning after Timothy died, Ronald called the insurance company to ask when he could collect on the money from those policies. And this was 9 o'clock in the morning, the day after his son has died. So of course, suspicion is now on Ronald. And they began to look more into Ronald's life. They spoke to his wife, and his wife stated that she did not know anything about the policies. Ronald never told her anything. The police investigation found that Ronald was $100,000 in debt. Over 10 years, he had had 21 different jobs, and he was also suspected of theft at his current job. He had defaulted on a few bank loans, he was about to lose his car, and he had lost the house. They also found that he had tried to buy cyanide from a chemical supply company in August of 1974, just a few months before Halloween. But for some reason, he was able to complete this purchase, and I'm not sure exactly what reason that was. Now, earlier in October of 1974, he had tried to buy cyanide from another chemical supply company. This one was in Houston. He was unable to make this purchase because the smallest quantity that they would sell was 5 pounds, and he didn't want that much, so he wasn't able to buy anything from them. So the police were unsure where he finally got the cyanide from. On November 5th of 1974, which was about 6 days after Timothy died, Ronald was charged with 1 count of capital murder and 4 counts of attempted murder. Ronald pleaded not guilty to all charges. Now, during his trial, a chemist testified that Ronald had contacted him a few months before Halloween to ask about fatal amounts of cyanide and how much it would take to kill a person or a child. Several people testified that Ronald had asked them about cyanide, and he seemed overly interested in cyanide. He was always bringing it up and talking about how much it would take to kill someone. His sister-in-law and brother-in-law also testified that at Timothy's funeral, Ronald talked about the different things he wanted to do with the insurance money. And he also talked about taking vacations and that type of thing. He recorded himself singing this song at the funeral, a song that was supposed to be about his son. And he got upset that evening when the family did not want to rewatch the recording of him singing. On June 3rd, 1975, a jury deliberated for 46 minutes and found him guilty of all charges. They sentenced him to death. After the verdict, his wife divorced him, and she eventually remarried, and her new husband adopted their daughter. Now, Ronald was set to be executed on August the 8th of 1980, but he was given a stay of execution, and they were going to allow him to follow up on a few more appeals. So those appeals were denied, and the next execution date was set for May 25th of 1982, and this date was also postponed. The third execution date was set for October 31st, 1982, and this was going to be the anniversary of Timothy's death. Now, this judge actually said he was willing to pick up Ronald from the prison and take him to where he had to be executed. But unfortunately, this date was delayed again, so he could pursue another appeal. Now, this appeal was denied just like the others. And another execution date was set for March 31st of 1984. Now, his lawyer asked for another stay, stating that the lethal injection was cruel and unusual punishment for Ronald. On March the 28th, That request was rejected, and he was finally executed on March 31st of 1984. Now, there were about 300 demonstrators outside at the time of his injection, at the time of his execution, and they were outside cheering, and some of them were actually yelling trick or treat and throwing candy in the air. And I know this is a true story, but I really thought that part was funny. Well, that's it. That's all for my story today. What do you think? Can you believe that Ronald was actually willing to kill 5 children? 2 of those children were his own children just to get out of debt. Have you heard of Ronald O'Brien, the Candyman? Have you heard of any other Candyman stories? Let me know in the comments. If you have another story that you want me to tell or something that you find interesting that you want me to look into, leave it in the comments. Let me know. Let me know what you think, and make sure you like, subscribe to my channel, and please share my channel. Help me out a little bit. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate you, and I will see you again next Wednesday. Bye.